All right. Hey, it's great to have Greg Beadles here with us on our podcast. And so, Greg, our podcast deals with the joy of leadership. And you have a fascinating role, something that frankly, I think is probably one of the coolest jobs I've heard of around here. And so tell us a little bit about your journey to this leadership position that you have, and maybe begin by telling our listeners what position are you in, and then we'll get to the journey.
Sure. So most days it's pretty cool. You know, we have our hard days just like everybody else does. But my current role, I've kind of got two things that I'm focused on with our organization. So with the Atlanta Falcons Football Club, I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. And I've been now with the Falcons going into my 28th year. So I'll get to the history like you asked in a second. And then sort of the other aspect I'm involved in, we have a company that oversees, manages all of Mr. Arthur Blank's sports and entertainment properties. AMB Sports and Entertainment. AMB are his initials. And so I'm the Chief Financial Officer for that entity. And so we oversee the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta United soccer team, Mercedes Benz Stadium. We manage and operate it. Also, Mr. Blank is the primary owner of the PGA Tour Superstores, which we have a couple of them here in Atlanta and more than 50 across the U.S. And then a few other things that he owns. We provide some services, some finance, HR, IT, kind of back office type things for some guest ranches that he has out in Montana. And then his foundation and his family office, we do a little bit of work for them as well, but primarily focused on all the sports and entertainment entities that you guys are probably familiar with here in the Atlanta area.
So your role really crosses over into really all of his businesses.
It does.
Okay.
It does. In different levels of involvement in all of them, but yes, we get involved and touch all of them, and we all collaborate well together and share best practices and things like that. So
how long have you been in that position?
So we started that entity, the AMBSE entity, about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it was really when we were studying buying a Major League Soccer franchise that obviously now has become Atlanta United. And also once we knew that we were going to build Mercedes Benz Stadium, we had a lot of negotiations and things before that. And so once that was sort of settled, that was the direction we were going, we set up the larger entity to oversee all the sports properties. So it's been 10 years now. So
one of the kind of the themes that this show ends up having is that we kind of craft a path for ourselves, which rarely turns out to be the path that we're going to craft. Yeah. I have the privilege of working with kids every day, as you are well aware, and one of the things that we constantly really instruct our kids is, hey, you don't need to know 17 steps ahead. Be faithful in this next step. Let the Lord direct your path in this next step, and watch how that faithfulness is rewarded. So tell us kind of about that early journey. Did you always plan on being in this kind of a position, or did you have a different path?
Yeah, no, that's great advice that you give to young people, and I get opportunities to talk to college students and high school students, and I share a lot of the same approach with them when I talk to them, or when folks ask me about career advice and things. So I grew up in a sports family. My dad was a small college basketball coach for more than 50 years here in Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma, and Louisiana. He was fairly successful. He was successful, and so we didn't have to move around a whole lot.
That's great.
I see that a lot in my industry. Being a coach can be a tough job where people are moving their families around every 2 or 3 years, and so we were fortunate we didn't have to do a lot of that. My dad's a big impact on me, so I'm very proud of him. So I'll mention that he was inducted several years ago into the National Christian College Athletic Association Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Which was a great honor for him and for our family. So so I had that background with him. He was an athletic director, college coach, women and men's coach. So I kind of knew a lot of the behind the scenes of athletics. A lot of times people that are fans of sports, will think, hey, that'd be a great area for me to be involved in. But particularly at the beginning of a career in sports, a lot of times if you're working at a game, for example, you may not see 1 minute of action because you're behind the scenes, you're in the locker room folding towels, you're in the press box running around doing things for people. So a lot of times people that are hardcore fans are disappointed that they're not down on the sidelines, cheering the players on, during their work. But to get more directly to your question, I did not know, I did not have a plan to be in sports. I went to college, undergrad. I got my major was in accounting and business at LSU.
Push that LSU in there.
That's right. I'm a Tiger. And graduated from there and went to work in Houston, Texas, in the oil and gas industry. Okay. In finance, accounting, internal audit. And I absolutely hated it.
Really?
Couldn't stand it. And I had a lot of great friends that moved also over to Houston, had some good roommates. And so I don't think it was that I didn't like where I was, but just the work, I just wasn't connecting with me. I learned some things. It was my first, real full-time job. And I thought maybe that finance, accounting, business maybe just wasn't for me, and that was what it was. So I started looking around at going back to grad school and started thinking about athletics. And so my thought then was that, well, maybe ultimately my goal will be to get into college athletics and maybe be an athletic director one day. And so, I did kind of have some of that background with my dad. That's what I knew. I didn't know a lot about other opportunities in sports business. So I did move back to Atlanta. My family was back here in Georgia. I grew up most of my life in Georgia. And went to grad school down at Georgia State University, and was fortunate to get a graduate assistantship there, and got a master's in sports administration there. Okay. And that gave me an opportunity to see a lot of different types of athletics and volunteered for just about everything that I could, from a professional golf tournament to college basketball tournament. I did an internship at IBM and their sports and entertainment group, things like that, to try to learn what I liked and what I didn't like. And I had a great mentor there that ran the program that really kept trying to push me back into finance and accounting and business and operations, things like that. I was doing academic advisement for student athletes, and I thought maybe that was going to be my start in college athletics. And he really helped me to see that it wasn't finance and business that I didn't like. It was the industry that I was in.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah. And
so that mentor was really important.
Very important. And so he kept pushing me towards that, and some opportunities came up at the end. I had a full-time job offer to go to Washington State University, which is a long way away from Atlanta. And so as a academic advisor to student athletes, and then I had 2 internship opportunities. One was in finance at Georgia Tech Athletics, and the other was with Falcons, a 10-week internship to work in the finance department. So I decided I didn't want to go all the way across the country. It's funny because one of my best friends lives just a few miles from there now, that I grew up with here, or that I knew here. But did the 10-week internship more than 27 years ago, and have been with the organization since. And just along the way, it's just been, sort of what you were alluding to, James, just the doing what was in front of me at the time and trying to learn and help the organization in whatever way I could. And so really, started at the bottom. And I say today, I see myself really as a glorified intern in a lot of ways. I just do whatever the organization needs me to do. And it's been a great ride. Mr. Blank bought the team after about my 7th year with the organization, so I helped to sell the Falcons to him. 20 years ago, and he took a chance on a North Georgia boy that I knew a little bit about the business, and I learned just a ton from him and all the other great executives that he brought in. So the last 20 years has been just a great experience with growing the Falcons, to where it is today, developing Mercedes Benz Stadium, one of the top stadiums in the world, and helping to launch Atlanta United, which has had great succce.
So those are definitely, I want to get to those themes for sure.
Yeah.
I'm really fast. So here you are, you have an undergrad, already jumped into a career that definitely not having, a whole lot of joy out of it. Yeah. Come back, do a master's program, and now you're serving while you're doing your master's, and you take that risk on this internship.
Right.
And you're not 19 at that point in time, fresh out. So, now you've got some experience, some ideas behind you. And so I love this idea that we've already seen these two themes that are coming out. One, the importance of wise mentors, really being able to listen to mentors who know you, who understand your skill set and how that can be applied. That's a big thing for people who are listening. And one of the things that I'm learning as a guy in my early 50s, I am learning you are never too old to have mentors. Matter of fact, I just reached out 2 weeks ago to a guy who I said, man, listen, I want you to mentor me. I would love to have you involved in my life in shaping me. He's 15 years older than I am, but he's just got this vast experience. And I think that's an important concept, right?
No doubt. I'm similar age as you are,
Mm-hmm.
and I still appreciate the mentors that are in my life today and friends. So just like when I was in my mid-20s, when I couldn't really see some things about myself, having others that do know you, that you let really get to know you, that can have input into your life. In all aspects of your life is just so important, because we're just blind to things a lot of times. We can't see where we may have shortcomings, blind spots, and so having others that can really be honest with us and that we can model after is just very important.
Were you already married at that point when you were taking the internship?
I was not.
Okay.
I was not. So I was with the Falcons a couple of years before Jill and I got married.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to jump into some of the corporate stuff here for a minute.
Sure.
Now, for anybody who does not know you, you're one of the most humble guys that I know. And so I do just want to throw out an accolade here. CFO of the Year award you received this last year, right? Through for large private companies. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that take place? And congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. I'm getting older, so I've been in the Atlanta business community for a long time, and one of the benefits of working for our organization is we have a lot of connections, a lot of networking. We work with a lot of the top companies in the U.S. that are headquartered here. Atlanta is a major Fortune 500 headquarter city.
And only increasing in impact.
It continuing to
Right.
increase all the time. You've seen Microsoft is moving here and building big campus, and that campus is already not big enough. They're talking about adding some more offices in Midtown and other places. So being able to be involved in with companies and leaders of leading organizations like that over all these years has been beneficial. I've been able to, for the last few years, been able to help out at the College Football Hall of Fame as a board member, and just get to meet a lot of people through different community activities and organizations like that. And so I think, it was a very nice recognition. It's I said this then when interviewed by them. It's really more a recognition of our organization and our great team that we have put together, because if I wasn't a part of that, I wouldn't even be considered for it. So we really do have a great leadership team, really the best I've been around in 30 plus years of being in business. And so yeah, it was. And
that's spoken like a
great.
guy with humility, and I love that. When you're the leader, I say to my folks all the time, if there's a victory, it's your victory. If it's a failure, it's my failure, even if it involves someone else. So I love the fact that you kind of shed that glory in regard to that, and it points towards your leadership skills and acumen, which I love. You are a senior leader in some organizations that in our area, which is a booming area, in our area are very forward facing. I mean, everyone knows about the Falcons, and their success. Two of just the biggest stories in the last several years. One has been the Mercedes Benz Stadium. You were very involved in the building of Mercedes Benz Stadium. Tell us a little bit about that, how that transpired,
Sure.
and what your role in building Mercedes was.
Okay. It's something that we're all very proud of, and it goes back, believe it or not, to pretty much the first day that Mr. Blank bought the Falcons. He did something great and went around and spent time with every single employee. Our staff, our business staff at that time, we had less than 100 people. And now on just the AMB Sports Entertainment side, so not including PGA Tour stores and all those, we have around 600 people.
Wow.
So it's a much bigger organization than it was then. So he took time, went around and sat in everybody's office and said, hey, tell me about your job, tell me about this or that. I didn't really get a lot of slack from him in terms of learning what my job was, because he was a CFO at Home Depot before he was CEO, and so he just immediately brought out financial statements and said, take me through all of this line by line, let's go through and talk about it. And so through that conversation, one of the things that he asked me was, hey, what's it going to take for us to own and build our own stadium? Because I want to control the fan experience for our fans and make it as best as it can be. And so we had great partners with the state of Georgia's Georgia World Congress Center Authority owned the Georgia Dome. Mm-hmm. But we were basically just a tenant. And so we showed up on Sundays, we had our games, but we weren't in charge of the food and beverage. We were in charge of, even at when we started, selling suites or selling sponsorships in the building or anything like that. And so because of that, we were a little handcuffed on what we could do. And so that was 20 years ago when we first started asking those questions, and so we started thinking about it, working on it, and it ended up being pretty intense effort for about 10 years. So a decade of my life, a decade of my career, dedicated in large part to all the analysis, all the negotiations, all the site evaluations of different places, financial analysis, hiring architects, builders, contractors.
How many years ago did you guys complete that?
So it was opened in 2017.
2017.
So
okay.
we're starting our 6th year of operation, okay. Which is crazy to think it's been that long. So for a few of us, Rich McKay, our CEO at the Falcons, and I and another one or two folks, it was pretty much a 10-year thing.
Right.
Has turned out phenomenal. So it was really from the top, inspiration from Arthur. He wanted us to go out, talk to the fans, go to visit. We went to venues all across the world. What's working for you, what's not working for you, asking people questions. And the main thing was, hey, find what are the biggest friction points for fans that come to our stadium, that come to our events. And so we researched, we worked with the NFL, we found out what those were, and then we just went after solving the biggest problems initially, and everything else just kind of flowed from that. And
now you can't even, I can't even imagine Atlanta without Mercedes Benz Stadium. I mean, it has just made such a huge impact on the city and on our surrounding area, and it's such a statement of the kind of quality that our city will represent. I mean, it really, with Mr. Blank's participation in that, your participation in that, it makes such an enormous statement on just the quality of our region. And I think this is a part of the impact of why our area is growing at such a fast rate, because there are quality people who are putting in those types of construction projects and really making an impact on the forward facing piece of our city. Now, a huge story in there that they had always said could not be done in the Southeast was to jump in with our soccer team.
Yes.
And so walk me through that a little bit. For those of you who are listening, if you have never been to an Atlanta United game, you need to. It is an experience like nothing other. It's like they planned a party that a soccer game broke out in the middle of, and it really is just such a great experience. And they said it couldn't be done, and now from the articles that I've been reading, you guys really are setting the trends on ticket sales and how to produce that. So walk us through a little bit of what that looks like, because this is a major success in our area.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you. It has been really exciting. I didn't grow up playing soccer. I grew up in rural Northeast Georgia. We didn't have youth soccer or anything, so I didn't know anything really about it. And so the last 10 or so years, learning more about it and getting into the game and meeting people that do actually know things about it and learning has been just tremendously enjoyable for me. And, as almost a 30-year professional football guy, I kind of hate to say, I think, at least I won't say which of my kids, since some of them still go to school here, I think they would prefer to go to Atlanta United soccer match than they would a Falcons football game. Maybe not my boys, but my girls, I think, would definitely enjoy that. It's such a high energy game, particularly the way that we play. There's no timeouts. There's, it's 2 hours. You're in and out, and it is just like you mentioned, just a big, huge party the whole time. So kind of starting at that end point, last year, it's just hard to believe. I mean, we had the 7th highest attendance for professional soccer in the world. In the world. So you think about English Premier League. Right. You think about Italy, Spain, everywhere in Europe, South America, where they've got, just decades and decades on us of club history and things of that nature. For us to just be in that category is just really mind-blowing. And I can't sit here and say, hey, that's the way we planned it from the very beginning. We had it all figured out, because, we didn't. It's been just like we were talking at the outset, just kind of one foot in front of the other, trying to do the right thing as we go along. And so, again, Mr. Blank kind of set the standard from the top. We, again, went around and visited a lot of different facilities, a lot of different clubs. Seattle was someone in the MLS that had been very successful from the outset. We spent a lot of time with them trying to learn from them, and they were very helpful to us, which we try to do the same to others that are getting started or want to make some changes. So the main thing there was we didn't want, Arthur didn't want, and our executive team didn't want Atlanta United to be seen as sort of a redhead stepchild to the Falcons, and I say that with 2 redheads in my family, so I'm qualified to say it. But to try to put them on equal par with an NFL team, right. Which a lot of folks had not done in the past. So one thing, when you go into Mercedes Benz Stadium, you won't see a lot of permanent signage for Atlanta Falcons. If you go up on the 300 level, it's pretty much dedicated to the Falcons, because and this is a hint that we didn't know how big soccer was going to be. Our thought was, well, we'll never use the 300 level for soccer, so we can have sort of our Falcons walk up there. But everywhere else, it's all digital, so that on Atlanta United match day, everything you see is Atlanta United. Right. On Falcons, it's Falcons. On an SEC championship game, it's SEC. And so that was a big push that we had, which helped Atlanta United. And so there's a lot of things that could go on about our CEO that we hired from the very beginning. It was just announced the last few days that he's leaving us after 6 years, and he's going to the English Premier League to be the CEO at Newcastle. Wow. And so he's just a part of the success that he helped to bring here, and with the club's success, that to think someone from MLS would be going to run an English Premier League team probably would not have been a reality, several years ago. But it's changed, and the league has been doing wonderful. A lot of other teams, are averaging very high attendance into the 20s and even into the 30s. It's exciting. We just we have several matches a year that we open up the entire building and have 70,000 people at a soccer match in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. It's unbelievable. And again, crazy. They said it couldn't be done. Yeah, now, crazy. There's a coup that took place, and I'm sure that you were a part of this. World Cup. Tell us about the World Cup coming. Okay. Yeah, that's a big deal. So 2026, the U.S. and North America had already been named as the host, and so we were on the early list of possibilities for hosting World Cup. And so for a few years we've been working through that. We still actually have some negotiating to do. Any folks that are out there in the soccer world familiar with it know that FIFA can be tough to negotiate with. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But it's a fantastic worldwide event. I mean, you think about the Super Bowl and the impact that it has, and then think about hosting 5 or 6 Super Bowl games, in a matter of weeks, which is basically what's going to happen. Right. So it's a huge positive impact financially, economically for Atlanta and for Georgia. We're basically giving the building away during that time, so we're trying just not to lose money through it. But it's really a community event, and there's people from all over the Atlanta business community helping out to make it a reality. It
will be such a big statement in this area because I think the success of Atlanta United has been something that has really been kind of shouted from the rooftops because it was just such an unknown entity and it has just taken off. Right. I've had the privilege, I was in the UK a while ago and got to see the excitement of soccer football, right? We have football there. I was in Mexico several years ago during a soccer championship, and let me just say, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just insane. I was glad to just get out of there alive. Like, it was just a remarkable experience. Yep. The level of intensity it almost feels like hyper-religious. I mean, it's so intriguing.
Oh, for sure.
So bringing the World Cup here, it's going to make such a powerful statement. So bravo to you and your organization as we're really just, again, putting Atlanta on the map. Through some of the things that you guys are doing. So such an exciting position. Let me explore just a little bit because I'm Arthur Blank has just impacted our region, not just with his visionary prospects on how he leads. He's an amazing philanthropist. He has just done some remarkable pieces. You get to have time with him. You're rubbing shoulders with him. Am I correct in saying you're his longest employee?
Let's see. That's a good question. Close.
So if not you're one of his very, very longest employees.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of people now that were involved with him at Home Depot before he bought the team, and so on his family office side and PGA Tour Superstores. Actually, our CEO of PGA Tour Superstores worked with us at the Falcons for a long time as our chief marketing officer. And he held a similar role at Home Depot. But there's a couple. But yes, I'm definitely one of the old guys.
What are you learning from him? What do you? He just. I've watched a number of programs with him on. I've read a lot about him. He just thinks on a totally different level. Just his entrepreneurial spirit. It's phenomenal to me. It really just surprises me every time I read something. Tell me a little bit about what that relationship has been with him for you, what you've learned as a leader, how that continues to progress. Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
Sure. Yeah, it's been great to be able to work closely with Arthur over the years. The last several years, he has tried to kind of pull back from being actively involved. It's really hard for him to do that. He's approaching 80 years old, so we try to remind him that that's one of his goals is spend more time with his family and things of that nature, and doing things that he likes. So we try to encourage him to do that. But he still brings value to us. We have pretty big formal meetings with him at least on a quarterly basis, and then our executive team meets with him more regularly than that. But yeah, just over the years, a lot of people ask me, hey, what was the biggest change to the organization after Mr. Blank bought the Falcons? And the things I would point to is he obviously had a higher level of resources, but always very strategic and careful in how you invest the resources. He always says, hey, look, you need to pay people what they're worth. You got to make sure he holds us accountable. You got to make sure you have the right people in the positions. And he's very entrepreneurial. He's, a builder, from the ground up. From the Home Depot days, he's very customer service, that's why we talk about fan experience all the time. It starts, with the fans. And, from the very beginning, he said, look, I want for the city of Atlanta, he does see for these sports entities, he sees himself as just the steward of them right now. And so he promised to put a winning product on the field and win in the community and have great fan experience, for everybody that comes. And so we try to deliver on those promises every day.
I watched an article on him, and he said 3 times in that interview, we're in the people business, we're in the people business, we're in the people business. Right. And I really see that. I mean, you can see that lived out with the fan experience, understanding that's those are the people who you're working with, but also from an employee perspective, really caring about employees and really working. And clearly I can see why he likes you so much, because that's clearly evident in your leadership style as well. In your leadership, tell us a little bit about who you manage. And then we always kind of ask for, truths. Are there nuggets of truth that you can share with us as far as leadership and management that really will be able to pass on?
Sure. So the groups that I work most closely with, manage, is that
yes
question? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So we just did a reorganization just a few weeks ago, and so my role has changed a little bit. Just in the last few weeks. And so for the last several years, as the CFO and Chief Administrative Officer for the larger group, AMB S&E, finance was clearly a part. And so the folks that run finance for each of those entities, part of my team. Our IT team was part of my group for a long time. I've recently given them up in this reorg. And taken on more direct operating responsibilities of the Falcons with the revenue team. Sure. So sponsorship, tickets, retail, all revenue generating things for the Falcons. Those folks are all part of my team now. And then at AMB S&E, we have a innovation team. We have a corporate strategy group, data and analytics, emerging technologies. So things like that are mostly behind the scenes. We do look at forward fan facing things, and if you think about things that have a lot of planning involved, longer term planning, trying to be strategic about where we are a few years down the road, those are the kind of things that I generally focus on, and the folks that work with me.
So real visionary, big picture thinking. In your very wide and vast role, do you have an opportunity to apply your faith in that setting? Is there an opportunity for that? I know that personal faith is a big issue for you. I know that that's very, very near and dear to your heart, and you live it out in a powerful way. How does that, is that a role for you in that corporate setting?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts and approach on that is there is no way to divide your life, or you shouldn't try to. And so hopefully my faith is just part of what I do. And we've been talking recently with some friends of mine and our leadership at our church just about the concept of faithful presence. And that's something have picked up from some other faith leaders over the last several years. And basically the approach of, when you think about the 2 commandments that Jesus said are most important, love our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so every day of life is just working those 2 things out. And so for those of us in the work world, the people that we spend the most time with and the things that we can have the most impact on are in the office, are in work, whatever that is, if you're a teacher, teaching. So how do I love my neighbor every single day? The person right in front of me with what I'm dealing with. What do they need, and what way can I love them best? And then the concept, the biblical concept that we are all made in the image of God, the Imago Dei, And God is a creator, creator of the true, good, and beautiful. And so we have the mandate to go out and reflect that creativeness in all that we do. And so solving problems, creating new things that help our community and people that are our neighbors to flourish is just what our everyday life should be about. And so I'm put in a certain position where I have opportunities to do that in the way that are in front of me, just like you do and everyone does. And so being able to realize that and understand how God has gifted me and gifted each of us to go and do those things is what, you know, our life and our spiritual walk is all about to me.
And I love the fact that you're emphasizing this idea that there shouldn't be compartmentalization, like it should be lived out all the time. Right. And I also, having known you now for a couple of years, it's been a real blessing for me to see that lived out. You've been an important person here at our school. You've been incredibly important at Oak Hill Classical, where you really helped lead that organization. You also were the co-founder of Arete Scholarships. And so I loved seeing how you have translated that skill set, which you have honed and defined in the corporate world, but now you've taken that skill set and the financial impact that you can have and just the academic and intellectual impact you can have on a spiritual realm as well. Tell us a little bit about why you've chosen to be involved. You're heavily involved in academics. You are heavily involved in also Arete Scholarship as one of the founders. Tell us a little bit about why that has flowed naturally through your skill set and your passions. Yeah,
that's great. So, you know, I mentioned my dad before in education. His whole life, my mom was a teacher. She died of cancer early on, age 53. But she was a great elementary, middle school teacher in the public schools mostly, and some in private schools. And so education just runs really deep in our family. My sister is a teacher. My sister-in-law is a teacher. We also have a lot of pastors in the family. And so I think I enjoy teaching. I taught a little bit at Georgia State in their master's program before I got too busy with my full-time job, but just really enjoy that. So I think that draw to and background with academics and seeing the importance of education on, again, helping people to flourish in life, led both to helping to co-found Arete Scholars Fund, which helps low-income students better afford opportunities like coming to Hebron. You know, for example, if giving them opportunities if they're stuck in a situation. Most of the families are single parent, minorities, low income, and so they don't have the same type of opportunities that we do to either a mom stay home and homeschool or afford to move to a better school district or to afford private school. So it's an opportunity for them to really flourish in the way they can. I know I keep using that word, but it's an important one for me. And then the same with Oak Hill Classical that you mentioned. So we're a K4 through 8 school that, in many ways, like Hebron, focuses on values and Christian values, character, and just what we were talking about before, just how all of life is spiritual life.
That's right.
So that importance, at a young age. Is really what some of the things that drive my involvement in those organizations.
Is your wife Jill, is she tied in with a lot of those pieces as well? Because I know that for a guy who is as busy as you are and who has had as many vast, high-level experiences, you need a very patient wife as well. I've learned that in my own life.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, is Jill involved with you in those pieces as well?
She is, in particular in the school pieces, both here and at Oak Hill. Over all the years, and so, being a school mom, having classes over for parties at the house, and all those kind of things. She's tremendously supportive on all those, and just like you were saying, in my work, I couldn't do what I'm able to do or be involved in without her, taking care of the home
That's right.
the home fires and keeping that going. And she has a great professional background. She was a nurse and did that for several years, and still helps out when she needs to from that standpoint.
Whenever you see somebody being faithful on the level that you are, you know that there's a hero at home. Like you just know, you know that person's there holding down the fort, making sure that part's smooth, which is such an enormous thing. So some of the things that I've heard today, which I think are so important for people to see, one, the importance of finding good mentors, the importance of really listening to people and allowing people into our worlds, which can sometimes be a little bit daunting, because particularly if somebody's going to speak honesty, that might not be only shining, but maybe also saying some critical pieces. But so really finding that mentor role, being faithful where we are. And I also love the fact that you've talked about this idea of the 2 commandments of, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, but then also to love your neighbor as yourself. And that mindset of loving your neighbor as yourself has also really driven your management style. That idea of that care and compassion for other people. One of the things that I have really appreciated is that I think in our society so often we seem to think that a senior leader in this kind of capacity that you're living at has to be this kind of loud, brash, gregarious person. And frankly, I love the fact that you are a quiet, introspective person who's a deep thinker, and yet you are making an impact in such forward-facing organizations that are not just impacting our schools, but also impacting our city and our region and really our country. But I love the fact that God can take every personality trait, all of those things that were built into us, and to really be able to use them for His glory. And so that's such a powerful lesson that I see also lived out, in your life as well. Any other management tidbits that you'd want to pass on?
Well, I'll just build on that what you were just mentioning. It's a beautiful picture of the church and the way that it's described as the body of Christ.
That's right.
And how if everyone on our senior leadership team was like me, it would not be good. If everyone was like our CEO, who is that outspoken, very, very strong, public face, inspiring kind of person, if we were all like that, it wouldn't be good. And so, putting together, if we look at it from the business side, putting together a team that complements one another, that can speak openly and honestly to one another. Like, sometimes my role is to say, hey guys, cool it. Like, right. we need to chill out here for a minute. We need to figure this out. And then sometimes the role is to me like, hey, Greg, let's go. Come on, get up. You've had plenty of time to analyze this and think about it, and you have 412 scenarios. Like, it's time to go. And so finding that good blend is so important. And then, right. When we see that in the church, both in a particular local church or in just the body of Christ, like, our responsibility is not to solve every problem. We have a body of believers around the world to help do those that all have different strengths. And so that's so encouraging. We can get weighed down looking at the problems of the world, or even just the problems, around the corner. But knowing that there's other churches in our community, other believers, that we can all work together, is really what it's all about. Be faithful
in the tasks to which we've been called.
There you go.
And then let the others do the same thing. Greg, hey, that's a perfect way for us to end our segment. Greg, I appreciate you. I'm glad to call you friend. And I thank you for just the impact you're having, not just on our town here in our area, but also on our greater city of Atlanta, and really on the whole region. Thank you for being faithful, and thank you for being a faithful believer, too, taking your faith right into the workplace. So appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This was fun.